right now that there are more people over the age of 55 starting their own business than there are young people. So there are opportunities. But if you haven't kept your skills fresh, particularly your digital skills, then you're in trouble. And you have to do that right across your life. It's just like at the age of 60, you can't suddenly say, hey, guess what, I want to be healthy.
Yeah,
it's too,
exactly.
It's too late. Similarly with learning, you can't at the age of 60 say, I'm now going to invest in my skills. It's too late. You need to do it right the way through your life.
Well, Lindsay, before we come on to your piece that you've written for us this week about going back to university as quote-unquote grey-haired graduates, we have some great comments from readers. Andrea Carley says, we need to change the structure of the workforce, employ older mothers to mentor and ensure that the acquired knowledge is shared to younger workers and not lost when workers retire, and I might add, Andrea, not lost when workers can't come back to work because the company doesn't offer flexible working. Sonia Cabrera says, no, I'm not ready to live until 100. I don't want to be a burden. I'm healthy now, but what about in 10 or 20 years? Well, another interesting point. Danielle DeSantis says, I'm ready. I'll be able to appreciate my retirement. Well, I hope your pension is in good shape, Danielle. And Marietta Detschkefska says, I think that retirement has to exist, but there has to be a choice to work, to study something if you want after retirement, because age is just a number, but the pension has to be a big enough number for living if you choose not to work. Well, thanks so much for your comments. Keep them coming in, because we've still got just under 10 minutes to go. So, Lindsay, coming to you now. Now, the piece that you've written, which will be published tomorrow morning on Next Act, ft.com/nextact, if you want to save it in your browser, it's all about returning to university to get more skills. So tell us a bit about what you found out. I mean, there are more and more people over the age of 50 and 60 who are going to university or going back in the UK for starters.
Yes, I was surprised. I knew the Open University had a fair number, thousands of people over 50 doing degrees, but there are some 50,000 people in conventional campus universities in the UK doing degree courses at the moment, and 13,000 of those are over 60. Birkbeck College, which is part of the University of London, is really leading the way with this. They go out, and when they have parents' evenings for new students, they go round, and part of their spiel is, and you parents, you're an empty nest, etc. Have you thought about taking a university course? And I think that is wonderful. And I think more of us should think of it. And you know what? You can actually get paid while you do it. Your fees can be paid. There's no age limit for the tuition fee loans. And if you are poor, you might even get a maintenance loan.
Especially if it's in an area where skills are really needed, like some of the health service professions.
Absolutely.
Andrew, I said you want to come in here.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. On the planning point, I think is absolutely crucial to plan. And there's two problems about that. The first is we're always short-sighted, so we don't plan long enough. But with longer lives, we need to plan some more. The second is that most of our planning is we look around and see what everyone else has done in the past and what works, and that no longer is appropriate. And I think, this thing about preparing for your finances is that most of our working career, we think this is about providing for now and in the future financially. But you've got to think of it as a portfolio in a much, much broader way. You've got to invest in your finances for later, you've got to keep investing in your health for later, and you've got to keep investing in your education for later. And you've got to do that at every single age. And I think what's challenging for the 50-year-olds, and it's great to hear more people 50 and 60 going back to university, is they're not used to learning at that age. We've had an education system that says it stops in your early 20s. And I honestly think with the Industrial Revolution, we saw education increase to 16, 18, because we needed the skill space. With technology and the new and longevity, we're going to see, I think, a really big increase in adult education. And then I think what's going to be interesting is who you learn from, what you learn, and when you learn will be very different. And I think universities will be part of that. And Stanford's doing some really interesting things at the moment where they're blending together all different people of different ages in the same classroom.
Yeah,
which is a wonderful learning experience.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think I'll read out some more comments, but then I think that for HR departments, and Linda, you do have a background in HR, they need to grasp the benefits of having younger and older employees working together, like our commentators. So hold that thought. Janet Cousin says, we are all on the conveyor belt to old age. Thanks, Janet. And we know for a long time that it's coming ahead of us, so maybe you're right, we should plan. But those of us in our 30s who think themselves young are already much older than a lot of people younger than them. Gabriella Anna says the issue is, I like this one, if older people have more jobs and work longer, then will there be less jobs for younger people who are already being elbowed out by technology, AI, etc.? So if people are made to retire, then the government should take care of them, as providing maybe a fixed income for life. This is being experimented in some Scandinavian countries. And people can also do volunteer work, which is much needed in society. I mean, that is a great question. I don't know if you are a millennial, Gabriella. From your picture, you look very young. So take it as a compliment. But yeah, young people saying, get rid of the oldies, we can't get a promotion.
So it's a constant challenge, misunderstanding. There's not a fixed number of jobs. If the old people have the jobs, it doesn't take away jobs from younger people. Just as women enter in the workforce in the huge numbers they have done, hasn't destroyed jobs for men. The more people work, the more fulfilled they are, the more income there is, the more expenditure is, the more jobs there are. I'm not trying to trivialise. There are lots of challenges in terms of hierarchies and structures, but there isn't an intergenerational conflict between the old and the young for jobs.
Well, I mean, certainly in my own experience, running the personal finance desk, it's fantastic to have Lindsay Cook, who has been a journalist for a lot longer than I have, come in, especially on things like, it's meant as a compliment, especially on things like budget day, where you just have so much more knowledge and experience than I do, and you're able to guide the rest of the team. And we love having Lindsay in the office, but there are a lot of HR people maybe who might think, don't want the old ones.
Well, I think, we've been horribly stereotypical, and can I just do a punch here now for millennials? I'm absolutely sick and tired of people going on and on about millennials. There's no evidence that any of us are different, that millennials who are now in their mid-20s are any different than we were when we were in our mid-20s. It's just an age thing. So why do we speak so much about millennials? I think it's really important that we look at each individual. The interesting thing about age is that when people are young, they're very similar to each other. So if you think about your 12-year-old, they're very similar to many other 12-year-olds. But as people age, they become more and more different. And so that's why within their age band, and that's why stereotyping is so incredibly annoying. What does HR have to do? It has to do a few things. Number one, it has to root out stereotyping. Singapore's really interesting on this. Singapore, you perhaps know, gives each citizen an amount of money to spend on training in any way they want. Well, it's fantastic, actually. And it's the Ministry of Manpower. I was speaking to them last week when they were over here. And they said it's surprising what the age distribution is. So, more and more older people. And then they said, and this I found really interesting, they said, we realise that we're being very stereotypical in the way we're talking about people. So we've gone through every single word that the government uses to describe older people and ask ourselves, are we being stereotypical? And they've got rid of those things. So first of all, do what the Singaporeans do and root out stereotyping. Secondly, bring in flexible working. People over 60 and 70 would like to work flexibly. Hey, guess what? So do people with young children.
Yes.
So do fathers.
So do I.
So does everyone. Bring in flexible working. And thirdly, really think about what do people want to do when they're 60. It's interesting that one of the reasons we thought we could get rid of everyone when they were over 55 is that there would be a huge group of younger people rushing to get into their jobs. Guess what? What we know now is that generational cohort, we call the baby boomer, was the largest generational cohort the UK has ever seen. And so once they're through, there's nobody left. The population cohort decreases considerably. So if you're right now in a pharmaceutical business or in an oil business, those are the two sectors that are absolutely in crisis at the moment because they've let go of their incredibly knowledgeable geologists at the age of 55, and they're incredibly knowledgeable research scientists at the age of 55, and a lot of the tacit knowledge of that industry has walked out of the door with them.
Well, I'm going to come to you all for a final comment, but final comment from our readers. Mark Batchelor, I'm going to pick you. He says, this intellectual capital that exists in experienced professionals with 20 years plus of experience is not being fully understood or valued by business and industry. Hear, hear. And he puts hashtag 280.
Yes. Hashtag 280. I love it.
We really like that. So on that thought, this is a question from your book. you say, if you could imagine your 80-year-old self,
Yeah.
what would they do if they were looking back on you now? So we'll quickly go through with our answers. And then
My
that would be
80-year-old self would say, it's great, keep on it, keep doing it, keep writing, keep teaching, keep having a great time.
Andrew?
I hope it was do the same. I think it's making sure, I'm 53 right now, making sure that I'm planning for my future, and that's a different from what I've done in the past. Actually, it's that sense of change and reinvention.
And Lindsay?
Reinventing
It's
yourself.
be open to opportunities. I am surprised how many millennials come to me and say, I've got a new job contract, can you go through it? Because I don't understand it and I don't want to pay for a solicitor, on things like that. So there are a lot of people who do recognise the knowledge and the experience and be open to helping people, because you don't know where your life's going to take you.
Yeah.
A lovely thought, and I hope that my 80-year-old self will look back and say, Claire Barrett, well done for making huge contributions to your FT group pension throughout your 30s, 40s and hopefully 50s, if they'll allow me to stay for a little longer. Thank you so much for watching FT Live. We will say goodbye now, but you can watch this video again if you go to Next Act on ft.com, which is our new hub for containing all kinds of free-to-read content for people in later life. In the meantime, we'll say goodbye from Linda, Andrew, Lindsay and me, Claire Barrett.